Yo, just trying to get set up in here. What's up, everyone? What's up, everyone? I hope you hear me loud and clear. It's been a minute. Feels like it's been a minute since I've been on live. Everyone that's in here, just want to wait for a few more people to join us. Drumming for Life, what's up? I hope everyone is having a good week as usual. Have a great weekend. And I hope everyone is just having a good new year so far overall. This should be a good year in boxing. 2022, we have a lot of crazy fights that are scheduled, that's in the works. Hopefully we don't have too many cancellations due to COVID and stuff. In certain places, the numbers are rising and everything. But it's starting out to look like it's going to be a good year. Okay. Much better than the last 2 years. 2020 was pretty much dead. 2021, we got some good comeback fights, some great fights, some moments, but we still had a lot of cancellations, a lot of reschedules. And now we're in 2022 and we have a lot of good fights lined up. And I want to discuss some of those fights. And I'm going to be a little bit all over the place. I have a lot of time, so I expect this live to be a little longer than usual because we have a lot to discuss. And I haven't been dropping that much content. Shout out to everyone that's here. The Racing Angel, King Alfred, what's up? Phil Booker, what's good? Watt Slope, what's good? Captain Crochet, what's up, baby? What's good? Happy New Year. I hope everyone is doing well and just having a good year, man. And just, I spoke on this before, one of my lives before. I don't know what everybody has going on in their life right now. If you're having a tough time, I don't know what your situation is, especially if you're here in the US. I don't know. People are getting sick left and right. Work is different. Family relationships is different. Everything is different because just society is different overall. Whatever you're doing, if you're sitting and you're not making too much moves, take advantage of it. If it's a time that you can save some money, put some money away, maybe make some investments, do it. Take advantage. Don't force anything. I think a lot of people want things to go back to normal, and I keep hearing people saying, I can't wait till things get back to normal. This might be the new normal, the way things are now. So you have to adjust with the times. This might be the new normal. Okay. So you just have to adjust accordingly, and take advantage of the situation. If it's a time where if you're used to being active, vacationing, going out, living, the nightlife, if you're used to doing that and you can't do it, don't do it. Take advantage and make some money or figure out different ways to make money. A lot of people became millionaires during this time because they found other sources to make money, because they couldn't go to work anymore. Some people lost their jobs. Some people was forced to stay home and work, and they had more time to figure other things out, work on things that they wanted to get going. They always thought about doing it, but they didn't have the time to do it because they worked so many hours at work every day. So take advantage of the time. Just don't sit around all day, sleeping, checking social media all day. Do something with the time that you have. If you have the time, if you have that time, everybody has a different situation that's going on, a different scenario, but take advantage of the time. Don't make any errors because you just don't know how tomorrow will be. You just don't know. This last couple of years proved that you can't always expect that your plans to go the way you expected. This is why it's very important. Punch Coats, what's up to you? It's important to invest. It might not have to be in a market or crypto or even real estate. It could be other things, you know, just you got to figure out a plan, you know. And a lot of people, I was saying, a lot of people became millionaires. A lot of people became millionaires using social media to market themselves. Their lives changed, you know. Look at these YouTubers and these content creators. A lot of their lives changed just sitting down doing what I'm doing right now, you know. So take advantage of the moment, you know, figure something out. Just don't sitting around and just lay around on the couch, binge watching a million shows, you know, being active on social media, arguing with strangers all day. Okay. Be the creator, you know, um, online or in real life, you know, offline. I mean, not real life, because online is still real life. I was holding this glass for this mug so long, it was hot, it was burning my fingers. I posted a few videos yesterday, about 4. I actually had to take a couple of them down. Well, I didn't take them down. I didn't make them public because I still have mic issues, but I figured out it's not exactly my mic. It's the cord. I replaced the cord, and now the cord works a little differently than the other cord that I had. And when I record videos, when I pre-record videos, I have to like reset the software that I'm using. I can't just push start and record. So I made a couple more videos. I made a video about Josh Warrington and his situation. I made a video about AJ and Keith Thurman, and I couldn't even post it because the thing wasn't turned on. So I wasted a lot of time. I actually did 7 videos yesterday. I posted 4, but there's a few that I left out. Thank you, Karma. Thank you, hun. Appreciate it. The support, Waves Vasos. We appreciate the advice. Yes, yes. That's for everybody, you know. And I think we all get caught up a little bit. It happens with me, you know. I have my lazy days where I just want to sit here and not do anything. But while you're being lazy, while you're sitting around, it's like there's other people out there that's grinding, finding another way to make money, you know, that is working, putting out stuff, doing whatever. So that's just my advice to people. It's a new year, and you know, it's always good to start in a new year, you know. It's just a thing that a lot of people do. They have resolutions, new year, new me, all of that bullshit. But sometimes you just got to get up and do it. And sometimes you don't need to start and wait until a new year to do it, or a new month to do it. You can just get up and start that day, you know. But sometimes people need like a new year to do it. They want to refresh, they want a reset button. So just everybody take care of themselves, take care of their health, you know, drinks lots of water, drink fluids, take vitamins, stay in shape, all that good stuff. All right. Yeah, I made a lot of videos yesterday, and I left some out, and I want to talk about some of those fights because it's mainly fights that's coming up. And I'm going to do breakdowns for a lot of these fights, but I never do breakdowns anymore unless I do film study, because if I do a breakdown based on how I remember them on the top of my head, they're not going to come as thorough. I like to do the film study here at home when I'm chilling, and then doing a proper breakdown. And there's a lot of fights coming up. Again, and I do want to talk about Kiko Martinez and Josh Warrington. I want to talk about Charlo and Castano in a rematch. I want to talk about Katie Taylor and Serrano and Thurman and Barrios and Conor Ben possibly fighting a hooker. There's a lot of fights. Roman Gonzalez, Francisco Estrada 3. There's a lot of fights that's coming up. Joshua and Usyk too. You know, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about that today, because Joshua last week, maybe about a week ago now, Joshua did this interview on Sky Sports where he was trying to express to people that loss hurt him. You know, that loss to Usyk hurt him. And this is the thing with Joshua. You know, a lot of interviews he do, people go in straight attack mode whenever like he says anything. All right. And I always tell you how I feel and how I take it. Anthony Joshua is very transparent. He's unusually like he's very he likes to be he likes to tell the world how he thinks or how his mind works. Right? I think we all can agree that he just likes to tell people or the public how he feels. It doesn't matter how rich he is. He can always be that guy. Like, I'm rich. I don't have to explain or answer to any of you. He can be that guy, but he's not that guy. Even when he tries to be like, he tried to come off as this angry F everybody dude at times, like when he lost to Ruiz or even when he lost to Usyk, but he's not that dude. He likes to be transparent. He likes to be open about his feelings and how he takes certain fight, his mental, and going into fights, after the fights. And when he says that fight really hurt him, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, when people come out and saying like, you know, Teddy Atlas made like he accepts losing too easily. You know, when I hear stuff like that, like an attack on someone, he can easily just turn into another person and just make excuses for his losses. He's not making excuses. I would rather him say that this really hurt me. I mean, this loss really hurt me, instead of saying, well, I lost for 20 different reasons and have a bunch of excuses. We saw that with Wilder. We saw that with Teofimo Lopez recently, you know, where these are fighters that they had a lot of excuses on why they lost. They didn't say I lost because the better man won. They're saying I lost because of this, that, this, the ref, the promoter, the gloves, the, you know, the you know, a whole bunch of stuff, you know? And I would rather him say, hey, this loss really hurt me, because he clearly went in there and tried to outbox the boxer. You know, this was a similar situation back when Canelo fought Floyd, which was I think it was my second video ever on YouTube, on one of my very first videos where I did a breakdown for Canelo and Floyd. I picked Floyd to win, but when the fight was over and I did a review of the fight, I said to you guys, like, I expected Canelo to take a different approach. I didn't think Canelo would actually go in there and try to beat Floyd at his own game. We knew Canelo was a great boxer already. We knew he had a good counter-punching ability, but what we did know and what we did expect was, we thought Canelo was going to try to walk him down, use his size as an advantage, close the gap between him and Floyd, and try to bully Floyd. You know, like Marcos Maidana didn't go in there and try to outbox Floyd. Like, yeah, he improved on his boxing training with Robert Garcia. He did a dramatic improvement on him, but we didn't go in there thinking like Maidana's going to go in there and try to outbox Floyd. No, he went in there and tried to physically abuse Floyd Mayweather. And we thought, many of us thought the same with Canelo, but Canelo went in there with the approach where, I'm going to try to outbox you. I'm going to try to outslick you. And that's where he failed in that fight. Now, if they were to have the rematch years later, which it didn't happen because Floyd was much older, but if the fight ever happened, if it did happen, where there was a Canelo that we have now versus a Floyd Mayweather, maybe around the same age, I think Canelo would have took a different approach, because we seen him adjust after that fight. When he was getting outpointed by Lara and he was getting sniped by Lara, what did he do? He started to be more aggressive, started attacking the body. That's adjustments. That's what comes with the experience. You know what I'm saying? So what AJ was saying is that the loss hurt me, because he's saying, when I lost to Ruiz, he was basically saying, like, in that fight, it was a different scenario than this one. Like, in this fight here with Usyk, I was 100%. I was very prepared. He was even much more experienced, you know, because he had to adjust to the Ruiz rematch, learn to be lighter on his feet. He was lighter going into, you know, not as bulky. And he was at his very best and still got schooled by Usyk. And I don't think there's anything wrong with a fighter admitting to that. I actually appreciate the honesty, instead of just making a ton of excuses on why he lost the fight, you know? But sometimes I think leading up and preparing for the fight, sometimes I believe that he can expose too much. You know, all these training videos, him bouncing around the US, going to all these trainers. Is he going to be with this trainer? Is he going to be with that trainer? Floyd Mayweather is, watching him, working on things, him saying in interviews, like, I need to be more aggressive, going back to this, going back to that. I think sometimes, being that he's the type to let us know what he's thinking, I think he let us know a little too much. I mean, I think all of us assumed that he would need to be more aggressive to beat Usyk in a rematch. But I think he might be exposing a little too much of his game plan, where Usyk is not exposing anything. Usyk is just sitting back, preparing in silence. We don't know what Usyk is doing. We don't hear anything about Usyk unless it's fight time. When it's a press conference, yeah, we might hear an interview or two here, but he's not exposing. He's not talking about his game plan. He's just like, I'm going to beat him. And that's all you're getting for Usyk. So sometimes I feel like AJ, as much as he likes to talk, and that's cool, that I like the fact that he likes to be honest, and he's, he just likes to just tell you how he feels and what kind of person he is. Sometimes I still think that going into a fight, I think he might expose a little too much. And I don't know if that's a good idea. It may not be a bad idea. I think anyway, Usyk is preparing for a more aggressive AJ because the other AJ wasn't enough. So AJ has to adjust for this rematch. I think it's pretty clear, but maybe he's exposing a little too much, showing videos, what he's working on in the gym. Maybe too much. What's good, Woog says AJ makes comments that a fighter usually says after they retire. LOL. I appreciate his honesty though. Yeah, I mean, again, that's all that transparency. You know what I'm saying? And I think AJ just likes to tell us how he feels, man. He likes to be an honest dude. And that's how he is. I mean, that's him. That's him. Beast Mode says AJ needs me as a trainer. Cut the check. All right. Maybe. I don't know. AJ shows insecurities in some of his interviews about Usyk, in my opinion. Yes, he does. But he's, again, that's him being human. We all have insecurities. No one knows who we are. No one has a magnifying glass on us every day and seeing what we're doing, the decisions we make, the things we talk about. No one knows that. But being that he's AJ and he's famous, all of that gets exposed. Jihad thinks AJ can't win. And Teach says, don't you think AJ has to talk like an obligation because of how big he is? It's exposure. Well, it's great marketing for a fight. And that's a good point, Teach. That's a good point. It's good marketing because if he's constantly out there and the fight is not on yet, and technically, yes, I mean, he's working on things. He's in the gym. But I don't know if he officially started camp for this fight. He's just probably in the gym working on things, staying fit. But has he actually started camp? No, he hasn't. But it's great promotion because it keeps people talking, even when the fight is not actually happening, it's not being promoted. It's free it's free promotion, it's free marketing. So yeah, I feel you on that. That's a good point. Now, as far as a fight, because I haven't done a breakdown or anything yet. This is not like the Andy Ruiz rematch. I know leading up to that rematch, I mean, even before Ruiz showed up overweight in that way in that day, I was very confident that AJ could beat Ruiz. I felt like even if AJ wasn't 100% going into that fight, and many of us believe that he wasn't, I felt like he made a mistake and he paid for it. And that's part of the reason why he lost in that first fight. And I felt that he can adjust to that mistake he made in the rematch. Many people felt that he was done, that he should not go into an immediate rematch with Ruiz. And I wasn't one of those people that believed that. Usyk is a different situation. I'm not saying he shouldn't go. I think he should do the rematch. But I think his chances of winning is a lot more slimmer than it was in the Ruiz loss. That rematch. Usyk is a different beast. Going into the fight, well, the majority of us thought that Usyk was the better boxer anyway. I just lean towards AJ because of the size difference. The size was a big thing to me, and Usyk, yes, he had a couple of fights as a heavyweight. I know he's fought in heavyweights in the amateurs. I still thought that I gave the edge to AJ. I was wrong. But after seeing the first fight and seeing how much better of a boxer that Usyk, even though AJ has improved over the years, and thank God he fought Usyk at this stage, because I think if Usyk fought him 2 or 3 years earlier, AJ would have been dominated. I do not think the Usyk and AJ fight was close. I watched it for the first time maybe about a month ago since the fight, maybe about 3 or weeks ago, or maybe a month ago. It was definitely when I was homesick, miserable, bored. I was in there watching a bunch of fights on the Zone one day, and I rewatched the fight for the first time. And I do not think that fight was close at all. I think I gave AJ 3 rounds. I don't think it was close. And I actually think that AJ being more aggressive in a rematch could hurt him. Could hurt him. I think because he was being so calculated in the first fight and trying so hard to time Usyk. I think him going in there and being more aggressive can get him caught with a counter that really hurts him and really puts him on his ass. That can actually happen in the rematch. And AJ does not like to get hit. He just doesn't. He gets hit, he clams up, he has to reset. That's how AJ is. I don't think being aggressive is more not just what he can physically do. It's about mentally, like being in there. Is he gonna have that confidence? You can prepare, you can work on it, but when you're in there and you're getting hit, coming in, walking forward, Usyk has the experience of fighting. He's fought guys like Joe Joyce, who was more aggressive, and that's used to being aggressive, that has a jab that he's going to keep. Joe Joyce is more dangerous to Usyk when we're talking about aggressive, big aggressive fighters with power. Joe Joyce is better at fighting that way. I even said that Derek Chisora is better at fighting that way because they're not as calculated. They're using their size, their strength, their power as their advantage, whereas AJ likes to box. Now, there was a point where Dillian White fight where there's some bad blood, there's tension. AJ is going in there like, I'm going to spark this dude out. I'm knocking him ice cold out. Like, I want to knock him out. AJ has not fought that way in a very long time. He's a different fighter. This is when the guys are younger. They're younger. They want to knock everybody out. They don't care as much about getting hit. AJ, no, he's become a different boxer. He's a boxer for real. People might say he's stiff for this and that. No, he's a boxer. Okay, I mean, there's guys like a Usyk and Fury that might be a little bit naturally, better boxers. They move different. You know what I'm saying? They're different. But AJ is one of those. He might not be on that level, but he's one of those. AJ's gonna have to find a way to being what he was. But one thing about AJ, and one thing I will say about AJ, even though AJ didn't hit Usyk that much, every punch counted. You can tell that some of those punches that he landed clean against Usyk affected Usyk, backed him up, marked his face up, because you look at the end of the fight, Usyk, those punches hurt. It's just that he didn't get hit enough with them. And then AJ would hit him. Damn, who said that? I was watching the channel and they made, I don't know if it was Boxing Gems. I don't know what channel. It's one of those film study channels. I was watching them. They said this, and this was the one thing I took, whoever video it was. They said that AJ would hit Usyk and not continue. They would admire their work. You know how a fighter is just, they hit you with a good shot and they pause. Like, yeah, I got you. Nah, follow up with it. You know, do some more. Like, just get those combos in. Back them up, but keep pressuring them. Keep backing them up. Hit them with something else. Put them down. Keep that pressure on them. Don't let them breathe. AJ would hit Usyk with a good shot and just pause. Like, yeah, I got you. This is not a game of tag. It's not a game of you hit me, I hit you back. No, keep that pressure going, you know, because you are the bigger man. You got to get those shots in. You know, it's like, I always bring up battle rap. I bring up battle rap because I'm a big battle rap fan. And when I watch it, there are certain battle rappers that'll say a crazy punchline and they'll lose the momentum because they're waiting for a crowd reaction, right? And then when the crowd doesn't react off that bar like they expect them to do, what do? They sit there and pause, and the crowd is looking like, now we see that you were waiting for a reaction because you thought that bar was crazy, but it wasn't. And now it messes up the whole momentum of that flow that they were currently doing. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, Danny Marius was crazy. Yeah, in that last battle. But yeah, I like to compare it a little bit to boxing and just hip hop overall, the hip hop culture overall a lot often because I'm a big hip hop fan. I might even bring in some basketball things in there because I'm a big basketball fan too. But yeah, I think AJ would hit, you know, Usyk a few times and he would just back up and admire his work and like, nah, you got to keep it pushing. You got to keep it going. You can't allow Usyk to get things back in order because you hit him and he backs up and he recovers. It's like, damn, you got me with a good shot. All right, now I'm resetting myself, and now we're moving around, and now he hit you 2-3 more times. It's like, damn, that one good hit you landed, Usyk responded with 3 more before you hit him again. You know what I'm saying? So I think AJ needs to be aggressive, but it's not about just being aggressive. It's about putting on smart pressure. It's about and not getting hit while you're doing it, you know, and that's the problem. Usyk is very, very good. You know, you could keep that guard tight. He's going to find a way to get through that guard, you know, and the one clear thing, and I think the one thing that worried me the most about AJ is how he looked at the end of the fight, at the final bell when it was the 12th round and he was on the ropes and he was getting pummeled by Usyk and the fight was over. Look at his body language. Look at how he went to his corner. And he looked like he needed to go to a hospital because he was so out of air, where Usyk looked just fine. It looked like a normal day in the park for Usyk, where AJ seemed like he seemed in worse condition in other, you know, even after the Andy Ruiz loss, you know, he was just like out of it. And that's one of those things where I'm like, you know what, AJ got to go into a different bag this time around. It might not be good enough anyway because Usyk might just be greater overall. But if he's going to go for it, he got to understand that, you know, being aggressive doesn't always work for you. Leaves yourself open to get hit more. And you might get caught with a shot that hurts you bad enough to put you down or put you out. So he has to be very cautious going into this rematch. All right. All right. So I think we're done. I think we're done with the AJ talk. Real brief, real quick. There's a few fighters I want to go over. Kiko Martinez against Josh Warrington. They're having a rematch. We know that Kiko Martinez beat Kid Galahad for the IBF title. This whole situation is so weird because Josh Warrington got knocked out by Mauricio Lara. But before that, he vacated his title. And he was supposed to fight Mauricio Lara anyway for the mandatory, but he vacated the title because he was trying to get a unification match with Zhu Khan. That didn't happen. He loses his title, but ends up fighting Mauricio Lara anyway, loses to him. They have a rematch. There's a headbutt clash. The fight is stopped. No one wins. And now he's going on to fight Kiko Martinez, someone he's already beaten. And it's just like, what's going on here? 126 is ridiculous. Smash that like button. Yes, everyone that's here, definitely smash that like button. Appreciate it, Maker. What's going on here with this division? I've said before that this is probably my least favorite division because we're in a division where people just don't unify. You know, we don't get any unifications here. I say that 126 has become the pit stop division. You know, where guys that are moving from 122, they'll make a stop before they go to 130. You know, might get a couple good fights in, but this division is an embarrassment. You know, I mean, at least we're getting Gary Russell against Mark Masayo, which is a great fight. I'm happy about that fight because, you know, Mark is undefeated. I believe Mark is undefeated, you know, and he's having a good run. His fight with Julio Ceja last year was one of the better fights of the year, one of the better knockouts of the year. Gary Russell hasn't fought in 2 years, man. Gary Russell Jr. hasn't fought in 2 years. Gary Russell has not unified. I know he wanted to fight Leo. I know he was willing to fight certain people, but they weren't able to make the fights happen. And Leo is with PBC. What is going on? That division sucks. Terrible. Terrible division. Terrible. It's a horrible division. It's a horrible division. So look, whoever wins these fights, I don't want to see Josh Warrington. I mean, I think Josh is going to win, but I'm not sure because he hasn't looked great lately. But it's against Kiko. I wasn't expect Kiko to beat Kid Galahad. I didn't even watch the fight because I didn't expect him to beat Kid Galahad. But if Kiko wins this fight, which would be crazy too for him to beat Galahad and then beat Warrington right after that, it would be crazy. I mean, Kiko Martinez has been around for a really, really, really long time. He's been around for a long time. That would be crazy if he's able to win those fights. But whoever wins between Magsayo and Russell and this fight here, hopefully they unify because this is just ridiculous, man. You know, at this point, like, let's get to these fights. Yes, is it worse than middleweight? Is it worse than middleweight? I wouldn't say it's worse than middleweight because at least we had unification in past years. 126 has given us nothing. Okay? It gave us nothing. Phantom and Leo Santa Cruz was the highlight fight of that division in the past few years. You know, that's it though. I can't even say anything. Like middleweight, you know, at least Canelo was there. We got Canelo and Triple G, 2 fights out of that. It's definitely not worth, you know, we didn't have undisputed at middleweight, but we had unifications at middleweight. Now, right now, I don't know what's going on. Right at this moment, like the last year or two, I don't know. Since Canelo moved up, I don't know what's going on. But 126 has never, like, when is the last time there was a unified champion at 126? I don't even know. You know, you had some good fighters there. You had Abner Morris there. You had Lomachenko there for a minute. You know, you had fighters there. You had Nicholas Walters there at one point. You know, all of these guys would lose, either move up, retire, or just go back down. You know, Donaire was there for a minute. I don't know what's up with 126. I'm just not a fan of that division. It's probably my least favorite division, to be honest with you. All right. Horrible division. All right. Moving on real quick. Charlo versus Castano. They're trying to make the fight for March. They're setting it for March in LA. At the Staples Center, I think they're trying to work on that. Listen, whatever works. Just make the fight. I want to get the fight. I'm glad that we're getting the rematch right away because we thought there was going to be some mandatories that's going to get in the way with that. Let's get it again. You know, again, that's another fight that's hard to call. I do think Castano did enough to win the fight. I wouldn't call it a full-blown robbery, though, but I think Castano won the fight, in my opinion. I think Charlo hurt him more, but Castano won more rounds at the end of the day. And I think how the rematch can go, well, I think it can go either way. I think if it goes into to a decision, if Charlo is not able to get any knockdowns in there, it's going to be hard for him to win the decision. All right, Charlo has to get some knockdowns or a knockout, to me, in my opinion. I think Castano round by round is too tough. I said this before the fight. Castano was going to be Charlo's toughest test to date. People were sleeping on Castano because they saw Charlo in there with Tony Harrison. I said Castano is tougher than Tony Harrison. He's tougher than, without a doubt. You know, so Charlo, he needs something big to hurt, drop, put Castano down, or possibly knock him out. Because Castano is like Sean Porter, but in my opinion, he's even better to me. All right, he doesn't really smother his punches. He's very aggressive. He throws a lot of punches, but he's a lot more calculated. Right, his punch selection, I think he's better than Sean Porter at 154. Very similar in a lot of ways, but I just think he's better. He's a tougher fight to me, and that fight can go either way because you can't sleep on Charlo because he do have one punch knockout power. He can change the direction of any round off one punch, and we saw it in that first fight. So in this rematch, it's hard to call, completely 50-50 like the first one was, and we just got to wait and see. But I'm glad that they're setting it up, and we should be getting it soon. All right. What's up, Chris? What's good? Racing Angels in here. Jay Foreman. Josh Warrington's face when he was asked to wanting to fight Lara again. I mean, he doesn't want to fight Lara, you know. And I think that headbutt was initiated, in my opinion. You know, I remember covering that fight live. I thought the headbutt in the rematch was initiated. I don't think in one bit that was just purely accidental, you know. Oh, Burt Wood. What's up, man? Glad you brought that up with Shakur Stevenson. I don't know who Shakur is going to fight. I did see that Shakur made a post on Twitter saying that there was a big surprise on his next opponent. I have no idea. But I'm going to give you a few ideas. First, I don't think it's Oscar Valdez. Okay, because that's not a surprise. That's something that we want. That's something we would expect. So I wouldn't really call that a surprise. That is a unification match that we should be getting next because you're both top rank. You both fought recently, and we should be getting that because that fight is overdue. That fight could have happened at 126, and we should be getting that fight. So I don't think he's talking about him. I don't think he's talking about Chris Colbert because Chris Colbert already has a fight scheduled, right? So I don't think he's talking about him neither. So what if, and this is just a what if, I'm probably wrong. I don't believe it. What if Devin Haney and George Kambosos is working itself out? Right? What if that fight is working itself out behind closed doors? I know there's rumors that they're probably going to have it. You know, they're in the Saudi Arabia somewhere or the Middle East somewhere. What if that fight is already working itself out and most likely to happen, and Lomachenko is available? I'm thinking Loma. If I had to say a big surprise, when you say a big surprise, I'm thinking Lomachenko because I can't think of anybody else Because Gary Russell, somebody said Gary Russell to me. I was like, nah, Gary Russell's fighting Mark Masayo. That's a real fight. That's a good fight. That's coming up. So it's not him. So I can't think of anybody else at 126 that would be a big surprise. At 130, I really don't see anyone there being a big surprise. Who at 130 would be a big surprise? So I had to think at 135, lightweight, I don't see it being Tank. I don't see it being Teofimo Lopez, who's probably going to move up soon. I don't see it being Devin Haney. Devin Haney's chasing George Gambosos, and he's in the runnings of getting that fight, and I think he's most likely to get the fight. I'm thinking it might be Lomachenko because it's come up before. I've heard Bob say that that's a possibility. Bob has said that before. So if we're talking about surprises, something that's major, that would be crazy. That would be crazy. Now, if Loma gets the fight with Kambosos, him and Devin Haney would be crazy, but I don't see it. I don't see it happening. It might happen, but I don't see it happening. And is Shakur really ready to move up? Cool Killer said Navarrete. That's not a bad fight, but I don't think it's him because Bob Arum already said that they're trying to put Valdez in there with Navarrete. So I'm not expecting that fight. Bob Arum wants Navarrete against Oscar Valdez. So I really don't think it's him. CMP, I forgot who Chris Colbert is about to fight, but he has a fight scheduled, and it's not like I forgot who it is. You got to look it up for me. I'm not sure, but I seen that he is scheduled to be fighting someone. He has a fight, not a big name. All right. So we just got to wait and see. Isan says Shakur recently said he don't want Loma and George won't fight in Saudi. Well, hearing the Saudi rumors kind of threw me off a little bit too, because we knew George wanted a big fight in Australia because that would be a big fight. But that Saudi money is different. I don't know who would be throwing up money for the fight for that. You know what I'm saying? Money talks. So he might be saying that now, but I don't know what kind of money is getting thrown around there. All right. Lou DeBellis doesn't seem to like Eddie Haney. So Kambosos versus Loma seems easier to make. It's all politics. Yeah, and there's also the WBO thing, the mandatory thing, which a lot of us has brought up. Oh, he's fighting Roger Gutierrez. That's right. Yeah, I seen that come across. But yeah, going back to what you just said, it's also the WBO thing. And this is why I was kind of leaning towards Lomachenko getting the fight. Because of the WBO. They can use that and make it a fight. He's a WBO mandatory. He has to make this fight. So I really don't know where that fight is going to go. But if Lomachenko is available, if we're talking about Shakur Stevenson, maybe that's the surprise that he's talking about. I don't know. He didn't leave any clues or anything. He just kind of made that statement and we don't know anything else, All right. Donnie T says the COVID-19 issue in Australia, which I'm not familiar with. All right. But yeah, good convo. What else is going on? Let's move on. Keith Thurman. I wanted to talk about Keith Thurman. I watched his interview with Sean Porter, the Porter Way, the other day. Great podcast. I love the podcast. I love it. They're very, really good. Sean really found his bag, and it's good that he started this while he was still fighting and working and building it, because you got to have another plan outside past boxing. I love when I see fighters getting other things done outside of the sport, because you're not going to be able to fight forever. You got to look for another plans. You got to look for plan A, plan B, plan C. You gotta find other options out there. And I'm glad Sean started this bag because he's great at it. You know, he has a good panel, a good group. They do great interviews. They know how to properly interview people. I watched the Keith Thurman interview the other day. It was a very good interview. You know, Keith Thurman has always gave us great interviews. You know, and he's a pretty good commentator too. I think he talks a little too much about himself sometimes, but Keith Thurman gave them a good interview, and they went into a long detail about their fight that they had between Sean Porter and Keith Thurman. And it was just a good interview, man, because Keith went into his whole mental about how he prepares for the fight, how he sees him winning these fights, how he expects these rounds to go, and how he's making the adjustments mentally, how he's adjusting for the fight while he's in the fight, while he's going back to his corner and thinking like, okay, this is what I got to do for this round and then this round. And I like hearing, like, that's the one thing about the real boxers, like the elite boxers, the world championship level boxers, to go in there and tell you their mental state while they're in the fight. Because we as fans and analysts or whatever, journalists, you know, we are not in there. So to hear fighters really tell you how they're thinking during the fight is so entertaining. It's so refreshing to hear. It was a great interview. But mostly the interview was mainly about him coming back and him fighting Mario Barrios, right? And he went into what it was like going into the Manny Pacquiao fight or going into the Josecito Lopez fight, right? Injuries he had there with his hands. Then the opportunity when Manny Pacquiao came up, he knew he wasn't 100%, but he wasn't not going to take a Manny Pacquiao fight. Like, who would pass up on that fight? And then on top of that, he also talked about how he would blow up in between fights. And that was one major complaint about I had with a lot of fighters, like especially the fighters that's on a highest elite level. Like, you are getting paid millions to fight. All you got to do is stay fit in between. That's the only job you have, because you're not working. You're not like other fighters that gotta still work 40 hours a week or more and then have to prepare for a fight. No, you guys are making millions. Your only job, you got one job to do when you're not in camp. All you have to do is stay fit. And most of them don't. A lot of these guys blow up in between fights, you know. And I think when it comes to Sean Porter, this is why I always give Sean Porter a lot of credit, because I don't think he was the greatest boxing talent at all. But I think the reason why he was able to run with the best of the best of them, the reason why he was able to run with those guys, it's because he always stayed fit. You know, he didn't have to work on shaking the weight off. You know, him and Kenny, they've been doing that for years because Sean was a heavier dude. Sean would be, you know, Sean can fight at 160 easily. But there was a point where I remember hearing an interview with him and Kenny a while back. They're like, no, we're trying to keep the weight down to like 154 when he's not fighting. You know, when he's not at camp, he's still fit, staying fit. And this is part of the reason why Sean had that great stamina. He was so aggressive. He threw a lot of punches, but he was able to outwork everyone because he was just he was a much more fit fighter. Most of these fighters that had more talented, Keith had more talent than me. Errol Spence had more talent than me. Kell Brook had more talent than me. But those guys would blow up in between fights. Kell Brook, you ever seen his face in between fights? He would blow up. He would blow up. Even Tim Bradley, who had a body of him and like Andre Berto had some of the craziest abs and they had the craziest physique. But these guys would blow up or not Berto, but Tim Bradley would blow up in between fights. He was walking around here looking like a Ninja Turtle in between his high. Like you look at him now, you look at his head. He's big now because he's retired, but yo, he used to blow up even back then in between fights. So I think that's part of the reason why Porter. But going back to Keith Thurman was basically saying, like, look, I needed this. I'm older now. So what me, what him, and I mean, I say me, what him and his team was working on is just trying to stay fit because he's older and he can't afford to blow up in between fights anymore. At this point, at his stage, he has surgery on his hand. He's saying he feels good. He's saying everything is good. Hopefully, he can stay healthy. Because at this point, he's 33 years old. At this point, he's at the final stages of his career. So he has to be in his current best shape. How good is that, though? Because to me, in my eyes, when I heard that he was fighting Mario Barrios, I said, wow, okay, they're really, really, really trying to not take any risk with Keith Thurman. Because Mario Barrios, it's not that he's a bad fighter. He's not a bad fighter at all. But he's not a big guy. At 140, he's small at 140. At 140, look at him in the ring. Look at his arms. Look at his upper body. Look at him compared to Josh Taylor, Jose Ramirez. He's extremely small. This is why guys like Tank was able to hurt him so easily. He can box good. But Cowboy Carl is not it. You beat him, that's not it. That's not something that makes me feel that he can beat a former unified champion at welterweight. Hell nah. He's small at 140. He's not a big 140 pounder. Josh Taylor is a big 140 pounder. Mario Barrios is a small guy at 140. If it wasn't for his height, he probably could make 135. But he's not big at 140. So him fighting Keith Thurman at 147, coming off a loss to a lightweight, nah, I'm not buying it. And they're trying to sell it so hard. And that's cool. They got to do what they got to do. They're promoters. So you got to sell the fight as is. Keith Thurman's doing a lot of interviews and he's trying to sell the fight. And that's cool, and he's great at doing the interviews. And, Barrios is coming off the loss. He's coming off his first loss. I seen the stuff. I seen the promo. It's good. But look, it's a mismatch in my eyes. And I know Keith is trying to get it together. He's been 2 years. But still, even with the 2 years layoff and everything, I don't think it's it. I don't think it's it. But not for nothing. And when I found out the news, I was probably a little too harsh on him because I have expectations. Keith Thurman, to me, when I first started watching his fights and started listening to his interviews, and once he started getting a little bit more well-known, before he was a champion, but once he started becoming one of the top contenders, like when he was the Virgil Ortiz of the welterweight division, once he was the what's it called? Once he was the Jerome Boots Ennis of the welterweight division, right? He was the up and coming guy that was calling everybody out. What he would say in his interviews would make me like, yo, I miss fighters like this. Like, I like him because he's saying all the right things. He was saying, I'm not afraid to let my old go. I'm not afraid of anybody. He was calling out everybody. And then it got to a point where he came to me as being very calculated. And I don't know if that had to do with his lack of confidence in himself because of these injuries, because he goes into a lot of detail about the Porter fight, the Lopez fight, the Pacquiao fight, and how his body was at that time. And maybe he did lack confidence in himself when the Errol Spences started coming around, the Bud Crawford started coming around. His tune was changed. Once he started acting like recently, he said he didn't even know who Jerome Boots Ennis was. And that made me feel away. I was like, that's not the Keith Thurman that I knew. And I understand that people change with age. And I also understand that his situation with Floyd was kind of messed up because he was the WBA, I believe he was like the interim champion or something for a while, and Floyd never gave him his shot. You know, he didn't get the shot with Guerrero when he was originally supposed to get it. He didn't get the shot with Maidana when he was supposed to get it because fighters didn't really want to fight him at that time. So I understand. But to go on and pretty much do the same thing, maybe it really wasn't his fault. Maybe it's because he was really injured. You know, I can't get mad at him for fighting Manny Pacquiao when he did because everybody wanted that fight. Everybody wanted that fight. You know, everybody wanted it. All right. And again, he did crazy, you know, he had some good wins. He beat Danny, you know, he beat Porter. I really wanted to see him fight. I wish I saw a Kell Brook fight back when they were both in their prime. That was a fight that I really wanted to see back then. I did want to see him fight Maidana a lot. I did want him to get his fight against Floyd. That would have been cool. I wanted to see him fight Manny Pacquiao when Pacquiao was younger. And I also really wanted to see Keith Thurman fight Tim Bradley. But at that time, guys like him, guys like Sean Porter, the guys that were with Al Heyman at the time, that weren't on HBO at the time, or not with Top Rank, because Keith Thurman did fight on HBO at one point, but he wasn't really well known yet. He wasn't really in a position yet to get a big fight at that time. But those guys at Top Rank wouldn't give him a shot. They didn't give him a shot. But I remember making videos about like, yo, I wish Tim Bradley fought Keith Thurman. You know, but instead they kept it all in-house, fighting Jesse Vargas, fighting Marquez, fighting Pacquiao over and over again. That's what we got back then. You know, same thing that PBC is doing at welterweight now. We got it with Top Rank before that. You know, it was a real thing. It was really happening. But you know, him going into this fight, man. Oh, shout out to Black Hat and thank you for the donation, the super chat. Lawyers are trying to rip off Crawford. He doesn't need to join the LDBCQ. Plus, he is one of the best fighters. Just fight the top guys. I'm not sure what you mean by lawyers. Are you talking about Bob Arum? I'm not really sure what you mean about the lawyer part. You know, now I do agree that he's one of the best fighters. And fighting the top guys, I mean, we all wanted him to fight the top guys. We've always wanted him to fight the top guys at welterweight. I think the issue was he was a top rank fighter trying to fight the top guys that are all on the PBC, or at least not the top guys, but the most well-known name guys were always with the PBC. You know, I think Jeff Horn, Manny Pacquiao was the only guys that held a belt outside of the Al Heyman fighters. All right, so you know, that's my views on that. Beddoy 34, thank you for the super chat. Great advice and thank you. And you're welcome. I appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Oh, you're saying the lawyers are expensive and the case is a waste of time. Well, we're gonna get into that, you know, and you might as well get into it now because when people say it's a waste of time, you're pretty much dismissing any claim that he can make. And I think that's unfair because you're basing it solely off some reports that were put out there. And you're just saying that he doesn't have a case at all. And the thing is with me is I don't know if he has a good case in a lawsuit. I've heard Bob Arum say things that I thought was unfair. And as a promoter, you shouldn't say those things about your fighter. Now, as far as it being racial, does he have enough to win this lawsuit? That I don't know. I don't know. But you don't know neither. That's the key thing. The people that are against Bud in this case are so confident that he has nothing. And why, I don't know, because this lawsuit is against someone that's been in this sport for 50 years. You have a lot to pull from. You have a lot to pull from to make this case. So I don't know for sure whether or not he has enough. I don't know. But what I do know is that Bob has said things about Crawford specifically in other black fighters like a Guillermo Rigondeaux that he would not say about any other fighters that's part of his stable. But like I said in my video the other day, Bob has said things about other non-black fighters, maybe not the same kind of things he said about Bud or Rigo, but he said things about Oscar. He said things about, Miguel Cotto. I don't know if it's going to be enough. What I'm telling you guys is that you have to wait and see. That's it. Be patient. Wait and see how it plays out. If Crawford is taking a gamble here, because he's definitely prepared to go this route, because it's all about the timing. He waited until he was out of his contract to do it. And if he's saying that there's other fighters that's part of Top Rank that feel the same way, but they're afraid to say anything because they don't want to get shelved, maybe there's something there. Maybe not all of it has been exposed to the public. Maybe there's things out there that's been documented out there. Like, I was watching this interview. It's an old interview, but I went back to it. Fred from Barbershop Conversation had someone on as a guest on his channel. It's old. I can't remember his name. I don't remember his title, but I know that he was someone that worked with Top Rank, and they basically were discussing how Top Rank match makes their future fights. Right? And the guest, the guy that was part of Top Rank, was saying that they had a list of black fighters that they wouldn't put in a ring with the other fighters because they were too skilled. They were too gifted. And they said that they were going to push these other fighters and have them avoid these black fighters. This is someone that's part of Top Rank's matchmaking. All right. And I don't know how true that is. But if it is true, and they're able to prove this could hurt Bob Arum if they're able to do it. But I don't know. It's just things we hear. We hear a lot of things. We hear this whole past month, we've been hearing a whole lot of stuff on the internet about the PBC and their business, Bob and his business. I don't like when fans jump out the window and just say, no, they don't have a case. We don't have nothing. How do we know? How do you know? We have no idea. Donnie T says, let me scroll up and me just read some of the comments. Donnie T says the lawyers might be leading him to think he has a better case than he does. You might be right, but we don't know. King Alfred says we'll be interested to see what evidence he has. Yeah, and that's my stance on it. I'm waiting to see what evidence he has. I'm waiting to see what comes up out of this, because this is a hell of a risk for him. People are talking about him being blackballed and, future promoters not willing to work with him in the future because of this. And I'm thinking, well, that would be the least of his problems. What I think would be the major problem is getting countersued for defamation, because this is a huge allegations to make. And if you don't have enough for the case, you're going to get screwed. You're going to get sued. Yo, Daddy says Bud is ill-advised. We have to wait and see. Carmen says attorneys have a duty to properly advise their clients. We don't know what evidence Bud has. That's my stance. We don't know. King Alfred says shady lawyers might be hustling. Everybody has a view of how they think is going on based on what? When you say that, that's a one of a million different possibilities. We can just sit here and think of what we think is going on. Can these shady lawyers be corrupt in his mind and thinking he has more of a case than he don't? It's possible, but we don't know. We have no idea. All right. But Bob Arum is not a guy that I'm going to defend. I'm not going to do it because Bob Arum, to me, is out of touch. Bob Arum says some pretty messed up things publicly, and he has been for many, many years now. For many years, about plenty of fighters. And he's from a different time where you can do that because promoters are the boss. They call the shots. You're the fighter. You're the slave to them. And that is how the business works. So you're not going to have me here defending Bob Arum. But what I will say is if Bud doesn't have enough for this case, he's going to get screwed and he's going to lose in the end. It's all about being able to prove those allegations. Yes, we know that Bob has said things that I don't believe a promoter should say about their fighter. And not just him, but other fighters. How do you prove that it's racial and it's against you and just black people? How do we prove it? If he has enough, we just got to wait. What if Bud wins the lawsuit? Then all of you people that said that he didn't have a case, you're going to go and disappear. We're never going to hear from you again. Because none of us really know. I'm not saying he has one. I'm not saying he doesn't. All I know is Bob Arum. Bob says a lot of things. I don't know what's documented. I don't know what's recorded. I don't know what is going on behind the scenes with Top Rank. None of us know that. There's no way you know what's going on. Based on what ESPN told you, Boxing Scene told you, maybe Mike Hoppinger, maybe Michael Benson. You know what they tell you. You don't know what's going on. No, Mikey Garcia is not on the case. I believe the same lawyer. I believe the attorney, one of the attorneys involved is one of the attorneys that was involved in Mikey Garcia's case with him. But look, there's a lot that we can say. People bring up why did he resign with him if he felt this way. And I said, well, there's a lot that's happened since he resigned with Bob. There's a lot that happened after he re-signed with Bob. A lot of comments that were made after he re-signed with Bob. Bob signed him for a lot more money. He had a huge purse guarantee for every fight. And Bob sounded like, whenever he was asked, he sounded like he was very regretful and of signing Bud again. And he was making comments about Bud not marketing himself properly. I mean, I've always had an issue with when promoters say that about their fighters. Because fighters fight. Like for example, how is Usyk marketing himself? Like, what does Usyk do to market himself? Like, why is that standard not for Usyk? Why is that standard not for Inoue? I'm naming boxers that are very skillful but get knockouts like Terence Bud Crawford. Why is that standard not for Lomachenko? What is Lomachenko doing to market himself outside of what he does in the ring? He gets knockouts sometimes and he outboxes the guys that he don't knock out. So why do we specifically pick guys like Terence Crawford or in the past like a Guillermo Rigo and said that they're boring, their style. Well, he didn't say that about Bud. It was two different things. So I don't want to mix the two of them that far. But what I'm saying is, when Bob had Guillermo Rigo, when Rigo beat Donaire, he despised Rigo in every single interview. I'll never forget that interview after the Joseph Obeko win. As a promoter, what are you doing to promote? You are the promoter. You have promoter on that's your title. Promoter. Promote. That's what you do. When I think of a promoter, I don't like any of them, but I respect Eddie Hearn. You know why? Because he's promoting his fighters. He understands the social media game. He'll sit here and talk with people that slander him all the time. I'll do an interview with you anyway. I'll answer your questions on camera. That is what a promoter do. The promoter builds a fight. The fighter doesn't have to sit there. Some fighters know how to promote and market themselves, and this is why they get opportunities, like Adrian Broner. Adrian Broner knows how to promote himself. Floyd Mayweather knew how to promote himself. Roy Jones knew how to promote himself because they did a lot of talking. They did rap videos. They were flashy. They showed their cars. They showed their jewelry. They'll go on Walmart and throw change up in the air at the cash register. Bud is not that kind of fighter. Usyk is not that kind of fighter. Lomachenko, Inoue. I'm going to bring up different race of people because there's a difference in all of these people. But for some reason, Bud specifically, why does Bud have to market himself? He's boring. Why do we say that about Bud specifically? You don't say that about Inoue. You don't say that about Josh Taylor. You don't say it. You don't say it. But when it comes to Crawford, he doesn't know how to market himself. And when it comes to being black, that's a problem with that's a common problem with black fighters. Black fighters have to be arrogant. They have to be flamboyant. They have to be flashy. They got to talk all this trash. They got to be, you know what I'm saying? They have that standard that they have to be that way, and they have to market themselves that way. But what if that's not your personality? You know what happens? You become Tim Bradley or Sean Porter. And we, as boxing, black folks, black boxing fans, we're a problem when it comes to that too. Because sometimes we don't support our own where they're not like that neither. When they're low key and they just doing their thing and you might not really hear about them, they just get in there and fight. They're family guys. They're real low key. You know, Sean Porter never disrespected anyone, but Sean Porter, because he was Sean Porter, yes, and boxing gyms, yes, and Andre Ward, same thing. These are two of the most, to me, I respected those two. I've always, since these years of being on this channel, I always said those two guys. I like Andre Ward because he's a family man. He's a married man. He has his family, his kids. You never see him in no nonsense. He's not getting in any kind of trouble. He doesn't have to be flashy. He don't have to do all of this stuff. He just wants to fight. That's it. Same thing with Sean Porter. All he be with his dad. Him and his dad move. I said I always like always like Porter because his relationship with his father reminded me of my relationship with my father. You know, me and my father just roll out. We travel together, we party, we drink, we have a good time together. A lot of guys don't relate to that. So they look like, oh, he corny. You know what I'm saying? It's a real thing. It's a real thing. So that's why I said, why is it different when, as a promoter, why are you telling your father you don't market yourself a little bit? Now, Rigo is 50-50 because Rigo has had those fights where I'm like, it's a snoozer. What is he doing? He's moving around too much. blast. You're capable of blowing your opponent away. You have the power, you have the skills, you can do it. But in this fight here, you choose to play it super safe, and we get nothing. So that's why we got the Abeko fight, the Rio Casimero fight, where it was like, Rigo, what are you doing here? We saw what happened in the Cordoba fight. He tried to be aggressive. He tried to do, but this is what he was coached in doing in that fight. And that fight, he was told to mix up a little bit on the inside, make it a phone booth fight. That's not Rigo's style. So Cordoba started getting the better on him on the inside and dropped him. So after that round, Rigo went back to his style, right? But he did a little bit too much moving. So there's fights, half of Rigo's fights are snoozers. But when he was dominant, he was a beast. But Bob Arum, as his promoter, he didn't put him in the right arenas. He's a Cuban. Put him down in Miami. That's where Lara and Ugas and them be fighting. Miami is big on Cubans. Put him down here with his people. You're a promoter. You should know that. Unless you're out of touch and you're 90 years old, which is what he is. He's out of touch. And I think it's safe for us. It's safe for us to say that. He doesn't know what he's doing. Now, when it comes to litigation, how do you prove it? Because we can have this discussion on who's better when it comes to race and which promoter is better for this fighter or this fighter. But when you come into, like, when we're talking about a lawsuit here, that's a different ball game, because you got to bring proof. You can't just come in. When it comes to Bud, you can't just come in and say, well, he was nicer to this fighter than he was over me. You're going to need more than that. That I do not know if Bud can prove. And this is why I say, for all of us together, no matter how you feel about the situation, sit back, be patient, and wait, because you don't know the facts. You don't know what we have. All we know is what's been said in interviews and what's been reported, which is a lot, but it still might just be a fraction of what's really going in there, when it's time to settle all of this. We don't know. And if we want to be real, let's be super real about it real quick. Let me grab a water. Hold on. All right. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff right now. Mouth kind of dry. Shout out to everyone that's in the chat. Make sure you smash that like button, by the way, if you haven't already. Let's talk about race and promoters, because we're adults and we are allowed to have this conversation, because it's a real conversation. It's a real thing. All right. Racism, racial bias. It's a real thing. And when you look at Golden Boy, you look at Oscar De La Hoya, you look at Top Rank, you look at Bob Arum, you look at Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. Okay. You look at PBC, you look at Al Heyman, Mayweather Promotions, Leonard Ellaby. There's a difference between the 3 or 4. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference between them. And a lot of it has to do with race. It's not all about race, but a lot of it has to do with race, right? You look at Golden Boy Promotions. You look at Oscar and how he pushes his fighters. Look at his fighters. When you look at Oscar, oh yeah, you can bring up Don King. When you look at Oscar De La Hoya, who is he pushing the most? Who was the fanboys, the core fan base of him and his fighters, his promotion company? the Mexican fan. He's a Mexican fighter. He pushes Virgil Ortiz heavy. He pushes Ryan Garcia heavy. He pushes Canelo, or he pushed Canelo Alvarez heavy. What was happening when Jamel Charlo was over there? When Jamel Charlo had the braids, right? And he was fighting on Fox Sports 1. When Luis Ortiz was over there, he was fighting on Fox Sports 1. Look at Rashidi Ellis right now. Rashidi Ellis is supposed to be up there with the Boots and the Virgil Ortizes and the Conor Benns of the world. What's going on with Rashidi Ellis? Where is he at? Why is he not getting any fights? What's going on? It's not that Oscar is deliberately holding back. That I can't prove. See, I'm trying to tell y'all the difference. Was he deliberately holding Jamel Charlo back before he went over to the PBC? No, I'm not saying that at all. Is he deliberately holding Rashidi Ellis back? I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is he's not getting pushed like the Mexican fighters over there. He's not. For a fighter that is not at that stage yet, and he's trying to build his way to the top, he's probably better off being PBC, Rashidi Ellis. Because they have, for the most part, not in every scenario, but for the most part, it's fair to say that Oscar does better with the Mexican fighters on his stable because those are the people that people want to see. Jaime Munguia. He's great at pushing Mexican fighters because at the end of the day, people are going to always have racial bias. Racial bias is not racism. Now, when you're a promoter and you sign a fighter, I believe as a promoter, you should do your job to promote whatever fighter you have signed. That is your job, all right? And that's what you're supposed to do. The fighter does what they have to do in the ring. But let's not just dismiss that certain promoters are better at promoting a certain race of fighters, certain demographic fighters from a certain part of the world, like Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren. They're better at doing that British thing. Savannah Marshall, y'all. Let's talk about Savannah Marshall. Who did she sign with first? Mayweather Promotions. Since I just talked about Oscar and the Mexicans, let's bring it over to the PBC. Let's talk about Mayweather Promotion. Let's talk about Al Heyman. You think Savannah Marshall was better off with Floyd Mayweather? No. They brought her out saying this is the girl that beat Clarissa Shields in the amateurs. Right? What happened? Most of their following, I'm not just talking about hardcore boxing fans that are just fans of everyone. I'm talking about fans that really just they follow with the race, the people that look like them, the people that they think they identify with the most. Savannah Marshall didn't belong over there. Can we all admit that? Savannah Marshall, he can't promote Savannah Marshall like the way he promotes Gervonta Tank Davis. Tank is perfect with Floyd. Now, I'm thinking he's not taking fights that he should take. But what happened when Savannah left? She left because it wasn't working over there with her. And people were mad at Floyd for pushing her against another Black American fighter in Clarissa Shields. It wasn't going to work. These promoters, these so-called promoters, are learning on the job. They're either learning on the job and learning how the business work, or you guys that's been around for too long and they're out of touch with the new. Mayweather Promotions, when it came to Savannah, they didn't know what to do with her. She leaves. She goes to Sky Sports. She's with Eddie Hearn, and everybody know who she is now. In fact, outside of Taylor and Serrano, there's no other boxing, bigger female fight that you can make in the female boxing world. Savannah Marshall and Clarissa Shields is either the number one or number two biggest, and number two in my opinion, because I think Taylor and Serrano is the number one. But that is the biggest fight that could be made in 2022 outside of Taylor and Serrano, because she's over there with Eddie now, and everybody knows what Eddie does with the female boxers, which is my next example. Eddie is better with the British. Eddie is better with the British. Well, Eddie's good at just being on the internet all day, doing a million interviews all a month. But when it comes to the female boxers, no one's pushing them harder than Matchroom over there. Matchroom is getting it done. They're doing it the best right now. Top Rank got some people. They got Michaela Mayer. They got fighters. Everybody got fighters. But Eddie's doing the best push over there right now. So even when it comes to the fee, now we talking gender. We can actually have these conversations without being so outraged and being so divided. It's a real thing. Racial bias is a real thing. Now, as a promoter, when you sign a fighter, you should be doing your best to promote them. Now, Devin Haney, in my opinion, would probably be getting pushed better if he was with Al and a PBC. Now, I don't know if he would be making as much money. So people sign out. Black fighters sign outside of the PBC all the time. Look at all of these guys. Keyshawn Davis, Shakur Stevenson, Jared Anderson. They're all signing up to Bob Arum, because these guys are in the early stages in their career, and they're going with guys that could give them the best contract at the time. Maybe they bounced around. Maybe Bob been around. He knows how to get to these fighters early. But what happens when these fighters establish themselves and they have all these fights and they make their names for themselves, and they finally say, all right, now I want to drift off and do my own thing. I don't want to work with Bob no more. That happens with everybody. It happened with Miguel Cotto. It happened with Oscar De La Hoya. It happened with Floyd Mayweather. Come on, we can have these conversations without being so divided. It's a real thing. Charles Edward Cheese, salute with the super chat. Thank you, my brother. Wave, what up, bro? Just hopped on. So I'm going back. Yeah, go back a little bit, because we're doing a lot of talking. This is a real dope live. Thank you again, always, for the super chat. And thank you, just for supporting overall, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. And go back, because we're doing real talk today. This is a real talk Saturday. And I just I don't like when people, I think my problem is I don't like when people abuse racism, right? There are real race hustlers out there. There are real people that will throw racism in every situation. They'll find do it. They're obsessed with it. But there's people out there, right, that will make it seem like it doesn't exist. You got these extremists, and those are the extremists are the people that are the problem. Certain promoters are better at promoting not just race, but certain fighters that is from a different part of the world, or maybe different genders. It is what it is. It is what it is. I think Josh Taylor was better off staying over there with Eddie and not going to Bob. But he had to do it because Jose Ramirez is a Bob Arum, fighter, a top-ranked fighter. So he had to do what he had to do to get those belts. And sometimes you had to do that. And I said that about Bud Crawford. Bud Crawford stayed with Bob Arum because of the guaranteed purse, right? He stayed with him because of that. He could have left and not resigned and signed up to PBC. But how do we know that he didn't even try to make that attempt to sign with the PBC? We don't know. We don't know. We only know what's being reported. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And that's what I try to tell y'all. I try to tell y'all all the time, like, yo, there's moves that are made that we don't know about. I think Bob Arum is great at getting these guys the history, with the way the history plays out, at least in my time of watching boxing, because even though I was always watching boxing, I didn't always know about the politics. I'm not going to act like I do. A lot of stuff I learned later as I got older of what took place because I understood it. But when I was young watching boxing, I didn't follow the politics like that. I just followed the fights. Only follow the politics only for specific fighters that I like loved. And even when I did that, it was after the internet was like the main source of information. You know, for the people that are from the times where they had to read boxing magazines to get their information, you know, or like for the people of the times that, you know, that got VHS tapes of different interviews before fights, leading up to the buildup of fights. For those people, it's different for them. But even back then, everything wasn't out there for them. They couldn't get access to these fighters directly. They couldn't get access to the promoters directly like the way that they do today. And that's why I said guys like Bob, Frank, you know, Barry Hearn, you know, these guys are they might be a little out of touch. I think PBC is probably better for the Black American fighter. You know, now that's not for everybody. You know, they have fighters like they had Leo Santa Cruz. They were able to put Leo Santa Cruz to some big fights. They were able to do it. Not in every circumstance, but we got to admit, like, yo, certain fighters are better off signing with, you're better off, if you might be better off, maybe not financially early, but as far as getting the fan base and the support you want, you might be better off signing with certain promoters. It's true. Because if you want a following, if you're Black, you want a Black following. You know what I'm saying? If you're a Black American fighter, you want a Black American following. If you're a Mexican fighter, you want a Mexican following. If you're an Eastern European fighter, you want an Eastern European backing. Or you might even get a white American backing, which is very common. It's very common. You think if Lomachenko was Black, you think he would absolutely get more support from the Black fan base. If he was Mexican, he would get more support from the Black or Mexican fan base. It is what it is. Same with Floyd Mayweather. The same thing. Why does it have to be that way? Because people naturally just identify with their own. It's always been that way. Now, I can't speak for everybody else in different parts of the world, but I know for America, which is the biggest place for boxing historically, it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. You know? If Roy Jones was white, they would say he's the best ever, hands down. It wouldn't even be no debate. Look at the Filipino fan base. You make a video about Manny Pacquiao, he is a god to them. He is a god. They said that he was the greatest ever years ago. Because people are going to support their own. There's nothing, you know why these conversations are usually, they always go left? You know why they always go left? Because people start getting disrespectful. You know what I'm saying? People don't know how to have this conversation. Like me, we could sit in a table with a Black fan, a Latino fan, a white fan, an Asian fan, right? Why can't we have this conversation without people feeling uncomfortable? Why can't we have this conversation without things getting disrespectful? See, I think the problem with people today, both young and older people, because older people now are the same way. They go on social media and they be disrespectful first, right? Because it's going to get more views, it's going to get more clicks, it's going to get more retweets. Why are people that way? We should be able to have these conversations. It is that way. We might not like it, but it is that way. And sometimes people don't even realize when they have bias towards a certain race. You might not even realize it. It might be happening to you and you don't even know it. I know it because I read thousands of comments a month. Thousands of comments a month. Some people leave comments on my videos just based on the title and what I look like. They didn't even listen to the video. I'll put a video up about Pacquiao, Wilder, Fury, Spence, Bud, what else? Canelo, and people will leave a comment with their thoughts on what I said based on how I look and nothing more. In seconds, it could be a 20-minute long video, and within 5 minutes, I got comments that's saying something about, well, you're black, so of course you feel that way. Based on the title and how I look. Didn't even listen to the damn video. Boxing gyms, you know, you getting a lot of views. You know exactly what I'm talking about. If you have if you are a content creator, you know that this is factual. Especially if you're not making videos on specific groups of fighters alone. If you're doing international boxing content like I do, and that's another thing. See, I make videos that I know are not going to get views. Like me talking about Kiko Martinez and Josh Warrington, I'm not going to get any views. You know why? Because I'm a black boxing fan talking about those guys. Kiko Martinez was what, from Spain? Josh Warrington is he's a Scottish fighter, I think. Nobody's going to come to my channel to hear what I have to say about them. But if I'm talking about Wilder or Spence or Bud, they're going to be here. It is what it is. And it's okay. I don't even get mad at it. What I get mad at is when people try to act like that's not a real thing because it makes them feel uncomfortable. What I get mad at is when people are disrespectful. You know? And I don't even get mad. I wouldn't even say I get mad anymore. I just get like annoying. You know, because I really don't get it that bad. Most of the comments I get, I'll get like 90% like comments that are thorough, even if they disagree with me. They're still thorough comments. 10% is like, oh, this guy's left a comment so dumb. I'm not even gonna even reply to this comment. It's just like no point. It's no point. Now, when I go to other people that make content, some of their content is so driven by drama and hatred that that's all the comments they're getting. 50% of their comments are not well thought out comments, you know, just some fanboys. You know what I'm saying? Oh, he's Leeds England. Okay. So he's a British fighter. You know? So yes, racial bias does play a part in promoters for sure. For sure. You can't ignore it, you know? Some guys that's with the PBC don't belong there. They're not getting pushed like the way they could be. And some fighters like Gary Russell. See, that's one of those odd ones there, because Gary Russell is over there. He's over there. There's fighters over there with the PBC, but he just couldn't get them in the ring with him. You know, you couldn't get him to fight. You just couldn't get him to fight Gary Russell. But you would think he belongs there, being out of he's a black fighter. Now, when you're established, it's different. When you're established, I think you get to a point where, you know, I started out with Bob, and you know, I don't really need his name. I have my own name. I could be a free agent. Now, Devin Haney's doing that now, but he's very young. He's still on the come up. So it's very risky for him to do that. But I give him credit for going for it at such an early age. You know? Yeah, I think my audience is by, because you know, Captain, we can check the demographic of our viewership. We can see where people are from. So the majority of my viewers are American. Now, I can't tell what race they are, but I can tell that the majority of my audience are American. So if I make a video about a Conor Ben, someone that is constantly talking, or a British boxing channel that has the same amount of followers than I do, makes a video about Conor Ben, they're going to get more views on that video because they're talking about a British fighter, and more of the British fans are more familiar with that kind of business. They might get the word more over there on their side. You know? Like you're a French boxing fan. If there's something that's coming up about a French fighter or Canadian fighter, like a Tony Yoka, they might go to you as the source over me, because with that fighter, you might be more familiar with that fighter. It could be about nationality, but it could be about color too. This is what I'm saying. I'm not saying everything is based on race, but it is a factor that people want to ignore. And I gave you some examples. Not everything is about, it could be, I'm just throwing examples out there. Color is one of the things. Yes, it is. You know, because Black Americans will support Black Americans over, like, for some reason, I hate to say this, but I've already said it plenty of times on this. For some reason, we don't like to consider Africans, and I say we, not as me, but when it comes to Black fighters, usually Black fight fans or Black content creators are discussing Black American fighters. When they say Black, they're not including the Nigerian fighter for whatever reason, the Jamaican fighter, the Caribbean fighter. It's weird. You know, it's weird, but it is what it is. But we can't like ignore the fact that people like to support how people look. How people look. You know? You can't ignore it. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. It's always been a thing. It's always been a thing. You know, I make the videos, I just put them out because I follow everybody. I follow everybody, you know? Because if you're limiting yourself just to a specific race or nationality or demographic, if you're limiting, you're missing a big part of the sport. You're gonna miss a great ass fight if you're just looking for a specific type of fighter based on how they look or where they're from. But if that's what you choose to do, then that's on you. That is okay. I think people should be exactly how they want to be. Be exactly whatever. If you like Gennady Golovkin and nothing else, there are people when Gennady Golovkin was out here knocking everybody out, right? There were people that started that were introduced to this sport because they seen him. It was just, it is what it is. And I'm talking about Americans. It could be Americans. And this is when nationality don't come into play. This is when race come into play, or what you look like, because he's Eastern European, but a lot of white Americans liked him. Just like they like Lomachenko. He's not from here, but they liked him. They were pushing him. They were up there saying that he's one of the best fighters of all time. You don't think race came into play at all? It does come into play. It does come into play. It's like the Eminem thing. It's like hip hop. If you ask any white American who's the best rapper of all time, I bet you the majority of them are going to say Eminem. And I'm not taking anything away from Eminem, because he's an amazing MC and he's one of the greatest lyricists I've ever heard. But it is a real thing. It is a real thing. He's even said it himself. He knows that people, I'm selling all these. I know he's acknowledged it. He knows racial bias is real. The problem is like people get mad. They want to be racially biased. They feel like it's okay, but when another group does it, they get upset. See, that's a problem. That's a problem. If you could be pro-black, you be pro-black and be comfortable with it. But don't be focused on what everybody else is doing. That's my stance. A lot of people disagree with that stance, though. Mexican fans, that's not a race, but Latinos. They could be they could be with their people. But when the pro-blacks are being pro-black, let them be pro-black. Leave them alone. Because you're pro-Latino, right? So do your thing. That's my stance on it. If you're that person. Now, if you're universal and you're one of those people that just love, I'm pro-boxing, like Chick just said, I'm pro-boxing. I go with who I like. My who I like is mixed. It's mixed all over the place. It's all over the place because I have racial bias at some point. If I don't know these two fighters and a black guy is fighting, I'm probably gonna want to root for this guy. But if I see that he can't fight and he's a terrible fighter, I'm like, oh, he's gonna get knocked out. It is what it is. I'm gonna have some bias towards my people. But if I'm gonna, like doing breakdowns, right? I'm not gonna pick a black fighter to beat a white fighter if I know damn well that this guy is not gonna win. Some people can't get away from that, right? There are some people out there that no matter what, no matter what the scenario is, no matter how good that white fighter is or that Latino fighter is, they're going black every single time. But this is a prediction. This is not who I want to win. I'm telling you, I'm giving you a breakdown on who I think is the better fighter and will be the better fighter that night. There's some people that cannot do that. Some people pick for or against a specific fighter based on race every single time. They can't get away from themselves. And they have supporters, many of them. So you as a fan got to make a decision on where you want to be. See, I don't diss other channels. I only bring up other channels if I'm giving them props, or if I'm giving you information that's based on what the topic at hand is, right? But if I don't support them, I don't support them. I've unsubscribed, I've unfollowed, I stopped paying attention to content creators out there that I felt that were just racially biased to a point where I don't want to hear your analysis, because your analysis is based on race and race alone. See, if you're giving me an actual breakdown on a realistic breakdown on how the fight can play out based on how we seen them fight in the past, then I support you. But if you're giving me, I think Willie Monroe is gonna knock Triple G out. No, because I've heard that, or I think, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and think it's too many examples of where I think that race played into a part of really bad picks. Really, really bad picks, really, really bad ones. I've heard some really bad picks over the years. And I think a lot of people. I think one of my highest viewed videos at the time was my Guillermo Rigo Lomachenko videos, because I thought it was a complete mismatch, just style and size wise. I just thought it was so bad when, people were really pushing for that fight based on race. It was all based on race. And I'm like, nah, man, I did not. I was a Rigondeaux fan that thought that was a bad matchup from day one. Oh my God, that was one of the worst mismatches that I've seen. And I was like, man, outside of the first round, I was like, yo, this is not a fight that should be going down. It's bad all the way around. But people wanted it because Lomachenko was getting all this hype and people wanted him to fall. And they used Rigo as a pawn to go there. And I was like, this is not gonna work, guys. Like, this ain't the one. You about to ruin a fighter right now that is legendary over your insecurities. You know what I'm saying? But it happens with other people too. It happens with the Eastern European fighters as well. It happens with them. Who was that guy? Shabransky. Remember that guy, Shabransky? They were pushing him. Why? Because he was an Eastern European fighter on the come up, had some good wins. But as soon as they put him in there with a real fighter, what happened to him? He got knocked off and dusted off. It happens all the time, and everybody do it. Everybody does it. Everyone does it. Just said, I honestly thought Loma versus Rigo was going to be a good fight. I mean, listen, some people honestly did. But what I'm trying to say is that there's some people that couldn't get away from the racial aspect into it, at that time. And I think it was clear as day. I'm like, dude, y'all, nah, man, that's like, nah, it was bad, I think Boots is actually one of those ones. I'm actually going through the comments now a little bit. Marion says, I think it might be because black fighters have dominated American boxing for so long. Other races want theirs to root for. And I agree with you 100%. And you know what? We should be able to make those comments without people getting so uncomfortable. Like it's a real thing. I agree with you, what you just said. That's fact. It's one of the things I wanted to say. That's when I heard about the top rank situation and how they they match their fighters. It might be real because historically these black fighters were dominant. So when you see a guy like Lomachenko come up and beat a Gary Russell Jr. who was undefeated, a Nicholas Walters who was undefeated, that hype is real, bro. Those are wins. Those are really good wins against dangerous fighters. You gotta respect Lomachenko. You gotta respect him. So when people disrespect him, it's like, why? Yes, I know he lost. I know he lost to Salido. I know he just recently lost to Teofimo Lopez. But Gary Russell was no pushover. Nicholas Walters was not a push. He made him quit, bro. The guy retired. And Gary Russell hasn't been in the ring with anybody nearly as good as that since then. You know? And that's why I'm saying, like, yo, listen, I'm never gonna be on here talking about this shit every day. You know, this is just one of those days where I'm just talking about it because we're discussing the Bud Arum situation. But as adults, we should be able to just be comfortable in having these conversations without everybody getting all weird. You know, we shouldn't have to do that. You know, so yes, it's true. People might root for certain people because against the black fighter, or maybe that's the thing. When you're rooting against a black fighter, just to root against a black fighter because you feel like this fighter is just successful, you just run and root again. See, that's something different. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is when you root for your fighter that you relate to because of where they're from or what race they are, and you're rooting for them, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you're rooting against, and there are people that create content that are just constantly rooting against a specific group of people, that's when I fall back. Like, nah, I can't listen to this person because this is not even real boxing talk. This is just some insecurity shit. You know, this is some hatred. This is hatred. This is not real boxing talk. This is just hatred. And if you are a content creator that are just attacking specific channels and you're not even acknowledging the other groups that's doing the same thing, then I can't rock with you neither. Can't rock with you. I gotta fall back. Like, nah, I see what's going on here. You're specifically attacking a group. Anyway, guys, I gotta go, man. It's been a couple of hours. If you haven't already, make sure you smash that like button. Thank you for everyone that donated to the channel. You know, I got more content on the way. Joe Smith fight is tonight. I won't be covering it. All right. I'm going to pass up on that. But I got to head out. But anyway, have a good weekend. You know, maybe I'll be on here tomorrow evening if I can. But anyway, today was a great show. You know, I like to be able to talk real talk with people. We should be able to do this more. And not just speak so blindly and being so ignorant and just being so like hateful and disrespectful. You know, I don't know what's going on. I know like on 2022 so far, I feel like both the people on the social media people, the content creators, everybody has just been on a rampage of negativity lately. And I'm not feeling it. It's not a good look. You know, this boxing community, I feel, is getting larger every year. but it's getting a little bit too trolly. You know what I'm saying? Too much trolling, too much disrespect, too much just trying to talk bad about the fighters, you know? Too much negativity. We can't do that. And if we are going to have these real talks, we should be able to do it like adults, like today, where we can just talk and bring up examples. And you might disagree with what I'm saying, but if you bring up a good point, I don't feel like I'm submitting to you just because I say, you know what, you're right. You know what, that's a good point. We should be able to have those conversations. You get what I'm saying? Without being so offended and I have to respond with blocking you or disrespecting you. You know, that's what the newer people are like. They're so sensitive. They can't take any kind of criticism. So I'm gonna block you. You know, Big Matthews disagree with me, or Ronald Finkley disagree with me. I gotta block you. I don't want to see your comments no more. No, you know why? Because there's gonna be another person that's gonna agree or say the same thing that last person. So you just gotta keep blocking people. No, you can't run from the truth. This is true talk today. Today was real talk. This is true talk. You can't escape it. It's always gonna be there. But you don't have to be disrespectful. Now, if people are disrespectful, then block them. Do whatever you gotta do. But we can't, the people that just want to ignore these things and act like they're not real things, like, you know, when it comes to race and promoting, these are real things. You can't ignore it because you can prove it. It's right out there. Look at these promoters. Look who's on their stable and look how they're being treated as opposed to others. You know? So sometimes it's good for certain fighters to move with certain promoters based on what they have to offer. Sometimes certain promoters, certain networks have more to offer than just money. Sometimes it's based on, it could be based on race or nationality. It could be based on what champions or what fighters they have there. It could be based on money. It could be based on anything. But there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. And we gotta always remember we don't know everything. We only know what's being presented to us. There are a lot of moves that's being made behind the scenes. All right. Anyway, like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Again, thank you for the donations, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.